So welcome to the organization mini session on Lightroom Classic. So we're going to be talking a lot today about kind of the library module. We're going to want to be right here. If you can, everybody can see the shared screen okay? Okay. So make sure if you are following along with Lightroom Classic, you want to be on this library module right here, highlighted in yellow or orange. And we're going to talk about, so the idea with this class is you already kind of have some pictures and everything in Lightroom or maybe on your computer. We talked about the import module in the last mini session. So now we're going to talk about kind of folders and collections and organizing everything. So let's jump right in. So first we'll look, one thing to remember with Lightroom is it's a lot of starting on the left and working your way to the right and starting at the top and working your way down. Not always the case, but that's a good way to think about it. So the first part we're going to talk about is the left-hand side, the left-hand part of the library module. And there's a few things going on here. We'll start at the top. We have the navigator, which shows a preview of any currently selected picture. And now the main reason you have a navigator is it gives you controls for when you're zooming into a picture. So I'll show you that a little bit more. It's not as much part of the organization, but you can. It seems a little redundant because you already can view a picture full size when you double click on it. But if you zoom into a picture, this gives you an idea of where you're at in that picture, and then you can navigate around inside that zoomed in view. So it's actually really handy. The next couple parts we're definitely going to talk a lot about today because they really help with organization, making sure everybody understands that. And that is the catalog, the folders, and the collection sections on the left-hand side, especially the folders and collections. But the catalog is our overall database of all of our photos. So it gives you a few different things in there, mostly having to do with all photographs, the last import, some quick collections, and if you are synchronizing any photos, you can kind of see everything there. So it's kind of a bunch of photos at once. It doesn't let you narrow down as much into individual sections. So the folders, which we're going to talk about in more detail, is really where you see the actual folders that you've added into Lightroom Classic. So these mirror actual folders on your computer. And then collections allow you to create your own sets of images separate from folders inside of Lightroom. They're kind of like, you could think of them kind of like galleries. So, but let's talk about everything in a little bit more depth. So we'll get to all those individually. So the first part is folders, and I like to talk about this a bit because it's really, really good to understand kind of how these work. So let me know if you kind of are already feeling good about this, or if you have any questions as we're going through. Make sure and stop me because I really want to make sure you understand this. So the folder section is one of the primary ways we're going to navigate and find our different pictures and photos inside of Lightroom. Oh, I think we just got notification of somebody else. Oh, I think we lost Kathleen. Okay. Well, let's keep going here. I'll watch for her to come back. Okay. So folders actually represent actual folders on your computer. So these are going to kind of mirror what is on your computer. Because when we add a set of photos into Lightroom, we're not moving them into Lightroom as we talked about with the import module. We're just telling Lightroom which photos we want to see that are on our computer. So when you're looking at these, since they're mirroring actual folders on your computer, you can do some management though through Lightroom. You can actually rename them. You can move a folder into another folder, and it's actually physically moving these folders on your computer too, okay? So the main thing is, so since it lets you do some management, the main thing is you can also do some different organization with these. And this is the primary place where I start my organization. I will name these folders so that they will match an event with a date or that they're descriptive. And then you can also do other things like search for that name. You can also favorite, you can color code folders as well for a little bit more organization. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But how's everybody feel about folders? And I'm going to go back to the view I can see here. Any questions on folders? Do you feel pretty good about that before we go on? Okay, and Val, I know you don't have a mic. You okay on folders there? Any questions on that between your computer and Lightroom? Okay. So let me bring this back up. Okay, so how do we work with folders a little bit? So if you're following along, find the folders on the left-hand side. You can right-click and rename anything. If you drag a folder into another folder, it will physically move that folder. One thing to be careful of too is if you drag a picture between folders, it will actually move that picture. Let me let Kathleen back in. Hey, Kathleen.
Hey, sorry about that.
No, that's okay. Just wanted to make sure you got back in. Okay, cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so we were just finishing up with folders, Kathleen. How do you feel about folders? You feel pretty comfortable with how those work with your computer?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so we were just talking about how if you drag a folder around over here or drag pictures out of a folder to another folder, it will actually physically move them. So a lot of times that's not necessarily what you want to do, but you can manage those files that way in Lightroom a little bit.
Okay.
So as it relates to organization though, the nice thing is you do have this little field at the very top of the folders window where you can actually filter and search for folders. So if you have a lot of them, I keep my entire, all of my pictures in one Lightroom catalog. And there's a lot of folders, different events and things like that. I name my folders, by the way, after the date and then the name of the event. So and I do it European style, so the year is first so that they line up right. So it'll be like 2020-05-11 space and then the name of the event. So, but I've got years and years and years worth of folders. So sometimes if you want to find something, if you kind of have an idea of what is in that folder name, you can simply click up at the top here and you can search for that. So that's the real simple way to find things, and search is pretty easy. We're all pretty used to that. But the other thing you can do with folders is you can actually add color labels and you can mark favorites now. This is a somewhat newer feature with Lightroom Classic. So if you wanted to actually mark certain folders as favorites and then later on tell it to only show you the favorite folders, or you could color code them. So if you wanted all your sports related folders to be green, for example, or red or yellow, you can do that. And the way you do that is you select a folder and then you click this little hourglass arrow at the top left here. And you can, well, I'm sorry, this is actually how you filter it. The way you actually set it is you right click on the folder and you mark as favorite, or you add color label to folder. Okay. And then once it's set, then you can click on the little search icon here and you can tell it to show all, just your favorite folders, or just the ones with certain color labels, or any, or ones without any color labels. So that's another way, just another way to narrow things down. That's one of the things that's key about organization within Lightroom and organizing your photos, is having ways to narrow it down. If you've got 60,000 photos in Lightroom, you want to be able to drill down to just the photos or folders that you want to work on. Okay, any questions on that? That makes sense?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to show some of this live too. So the next thing that's really good to understand is collections. Has anybody played with collections at all yet?
No.
Okay, so I primarily use folders, but the limitation with folders is if I want to have certain sets of pictures together that were maybe taken at different times from different events, if I just move those around into one folder, I actually moved them out of the original folder. And that kind of messes up the original organization in the folders. I want to keep them under the folder that they were originally taken, under the original event. So a collection is like a virtual gallery, you could call it. It's only kept track of inside of Lightroom. So you're not physically creating any folders on your computer or moving any files around. So they let you collect or set up a gallery of a bunch of different photos from different locations, from different folders into one place. And you can name it anything you want. So if I wanted to, let's say I was doing a gallery show, I'm going to print a bunch of pictures, and I wanted to pick my best pictures from several different events or different times, then I could just create a collection, call it, gallery pictures, and then I could go to my folders and go through all the different events I've shot, pick a picture or two from each one and drag them down to that collection. And then when I click on that collection, they will all show up in the grid as one view. And so I can see them all together, but I didn't actually move anything around. So it's a really nice way to actually, another organizational tool that really helps you within Lightroom. I use it all the time now. And the nice thing about collections is since they're virtual, you can add and remove photos, you can add and remove collections and delete things out of collections all day long, and it doesn't actually remove your original files. It'll let you know that it's just removing it from the collection, and those photos are still back in their original folders. Okay, so that makes sense to everybody?
Yes.
Okay.
Chris, question.
Yeah.
In collections then, can you see the dates the photos were taken?
Yeah, you definitely can. If you click on an individual photo, I'll show you how to bring up an info view. Here, actually, let me get my Lightroom up on the other screen here so I can kind of show you. So it's kind of more of a different info view. There's a couple places you can kind of see the date that a photo was taken. So I'm gonna drag this up here. Everybody see that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if we have, so right now I don't have any collections, but just like with any photo, if I double click on a photo and I can press my I button, so just I on the keyboard, and see this little info up here? If I press I, it'll change what's there. So it'll rotate through. It'll be off, or it'll show the date and resolution, or it'll show all the exposure information, and then you can rotate it off. So if you switch it to the one where it shows the date, this picture doesn't have a valid date actually. Some of these were taken at, so if we go to this one, so then it'll show the date there. So 4/24/15, 2015. Now the other way you can find the date is if you go to the right hand side under metadata, and it should show the creation date right here. There you go, date created. Okay. And that'll change for each one. So, but the easiest way is to press that I button so it shows up right there. Now, if I go down here and create a collection, so you create collections by simply hitting this plus right here, and you hit create collection. And then I can simply go and type anything I want. So let's say gallery favorites. Or here, well, let's just organize them. Let's say we had, this isn't typically the case, but if we had one folder like this one with a bunch of different kinds of pictures in it, and maybe I wanted to leave them all in that same folder for some reason, but I would go down here and hit create collection, and I could call one like portraits. And it just makes a collection space here named after whatever I called it. And we'll call another one landscape and nature. Okay, now there's some other options we'll talk about with those, but that's simply how you create a basic collection. And then if I went here and I just selected all of the portraits, and I just dragged those down, and now they're inside that collection view. So it didn't move anything out. Now I can. What's that?
Still exist folders too?
Correct. Yeah. So the collections won't affect the folders at all. The nice thing about collections is it leaves everything in their place in the folders. So nothing actually changes in the folders. Because let's say, so I just did everything from one folder, but let's say I wanted to, there's this portrait retouching class I teach too. So I've got some different portraits in there. So let's say I wanted some of these to also show up in the portraits collection. So now they all show up together, even though these are from different folders. Whereas if I tried to take this photo and actually dragged it over to this Lightroom Basics folder, it would actually move that file, and I don't want to actually move it. I want it to stay in that folder. But now I can see them all together in like one gallery or in one collection without moving any files around. Now I can easily just right-click and remove from collection, and it's out of the collection, but it's still back over here in the folders. It's just virtual. It doesn't actually really change anything in the folders. I can do things all day long. Okay, now let's go and just throw a few other things in there just for the heck of it. So just drag and drop, and now I've got some landscape and nature photos. So now the other thing about collections is there's a little bit more organization that you can do here as well. So just like folders, you can click up here and you can filter and search for collections. So if I just type like portrait, it'll just show the one that matches whatever I search for. And you can also color code and things like that too. So add color label like in red, yellow, green, blue. So if I labeled this red, it just shows it over here on the right hand side a little bit. And now if I went up here and said I just want to see the ones labeled red, it'll only show me the ones labeled red. And then I can go and I can also just hit all, and I can always right click and take that off. Now the other thing that you have with collections is a collection set. So if we go up and hit the little plus again, and we can do a collection set. Don't worry about smart collections yet, but if we do a collection set, think of that almost like, I don't want you to confuse it with folders, but it's almost like a folder for your collections. Not a folder like a computer folder. It's just a place to organize a bunch of collections or a set of collections. So if I call this like gallery pictures. So it created a collection set. Now I can't really put any pictures into this, but I can put collections underneath it. It's just another way to organize collections. So if I had a bunch of collections that were related to gallery pictures, I could put them under that set. Now I could also make a collection set and maybe call it like, let's say portfolio. Oh, hands on the wrong place. There we go. Okay. So then under portfolio, so if you click on the set and then hit the plus and create collection, it'll automatically set it to go inside of that collection set. And now for that portfolio, I could also do something like portraits. Let's call one sports. And street. Okay, so now I've got a bunch of collections underneath that portfolio set. And then I can go up and I can just drag and drop. So I can put one in sports, and put one in portraits, I could put one in street. And now I've got specific photos under the portfolio set under their own collections there, which will be separate from these collections under gallery pictures. Okay, so just another way that you can kind of organize collections and separate those out. And then I can use my arrows if I want to kind of clean up the view, if I had a huge list, to close those. Now, I don't want you to worry about smart collections too much in this class, but they're basically an automatic collection. So it has some built-in ones, and they're basically collections that will just automatically find any pictures in your library that match certain criteria. So you can see some of the built-in ones here, like any pictures that were color-coded as red. So I didn't put these photos in any collection, it just found them because this smart collection is set to look for pictures that were color-coded red. So I can also do, I don't have anything in here, but if you had video files or pictures without keywords, that's what smart collections kind of do. They automatically find files. It's kind of like if you were searching or filtering for files too. So don't worry about that too much yet. I would first get familiar with just using collections, and you can drag and drop whatever you want. And then I can always clear all this out. You know, it doesn't affect my actual pictures. So it'll tell you it's got 3 photos that will remain in your catalog, and they may still be in other collections. We're just getting rid of this collection, so we won't have that view anymore. So I can get rid of all of these, and it does not affect my actual original files and folders. So I'm just going to get rid of these here. You can get rid of the collection sets. So I just kind of cleared everything out. The smart ones are built in, but they're all still here. And any editing that I did in the collection is going to mirror back here, because this is the actual original source. So you won't lose your edits and things like that by taking something out of a collection necessarily. Okay, it's still going to be on the file. Now Lightroom's still non-destructive, so you can always reset it, but that's basically what collections are for. Okay, so let's go. Bring that back up. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the interface in the middle panel. So that's kind of the left-hand side. The main place you're going to be doing stuff on the left-hand side is folders and collections, and then possibly color coding or searching there. But if you are careful about how you name your folder structure and everything, then you should be pretty good on being able to find things. One more thing I want to kind of talk about real quick. Let me go back to Lightroom here. With folders, this class folder here is a parent folder. Okay, let me show you one thing here. So usually these folders will show up, anything that you've imported in Lightroom, that folder will then show up over here on the left. Besides using the import dialog, which we talked about in the import class, you can also go up to the little plus here and just hit add folder, and you can find another folder with pictures, and you can add all those into Lightroom that way. That will also just bring up the import dialog. It's kind of another way of importing your stuff. But the other thing you can do with this plus that you can't do as much with the import dialog is you can just add a new subfolder. So if I had this class one, here I'm going to turn off show subfolders. So this class folder doesn't actually have any photos in it. It just has these other subfolders underneath it. So if I wanted to add a new folder to here and call it, let's say, landscape, and hit create, it just created a new folder with no photos in it. So that's a way you can kind of create a new folder within Lightroom and have it already show up within Lightroom. And then you can always add photos to it later, especially if you wanted to just drag and drop. So if I wanted to actually move some files around and split them out, so if I wanted to actually take this file and move it to this landscape folder I just created, it's now in there, but that actually moved it on my computer. It actually changed that location of that file. So, but that's another thing you can do right there is add folder and add subfolder. Now the other key option is show photos in subfolder. By default, this is usually on. So if this is turned on, then if you click on a folder that has a bunch of other folders underneath it, it will just show you every single picture that's under all of those folders. Okay, it's a good way to see everything. But the confusing thing is this folder class doesn't actually have any photos in it. It's just showing you the photos that are underneath it in these other folders. So if we turn this off, you can see that. Okay, so if you turn, sometimes I will turn this off. If you turn off the show photos in subfolders, then it will only show you the photos that are in a specific folder. And if you click on a folder that doesn't have anything, it will show that there's no pictures in there. So it makes it a little easier to tell what's actually in what folders. Because if you had one folder with 10 photos in it and then a folder underneath it with 30, it might get confusing because it would show that it would make it look like that top folder had 40 photos in it, even if it doesn't. Okay, so I'm going to leave that off for now. Okay, so let's go back to the slides. Okay, so if we go to the right in the middle panel, this is where we actually view our photos. We have our grid view, right? So when we click on a folder or a collection, this is what shows us what is inside that folder or collection. So I just wanted to go over real quick some of the controls and then go into some of the organization here, because this is where we can really start to organize our photos in a lot of ways. So where we can really get into the meat and potatoes of that. So the main thing is this is where you select an individual or a set of photos so that you can do several things. Some of the things we're going to talk about is you can favorite them, you can star rate them, and you can color code them. You can actually flag them besides the favorite. So let's take a look at some of that. The main thing to look at is there's this toolbar at the very, very bottom here. Does everybody see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So before we get into too much on the toolbar, let's just talk about some simple controls. And one thing I like to just double check to make sure, does everybody know how to select not just a single photo, but several photos at one time using Shift or Control and all that? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So that's real key here, because the nice thing about Lightroom is it really lets you work on not just one photo at a time, but many photos at once. And that's kind of the power of organizing with Lightroom, I feel like. So this might be some review for some people just to make sure. But if you just single click on any image, it selects it. If you double click on an image or press the E key, it will zoom into that picture into what's called loop view, which means you're looking at that one photo, kind of full size. Once you're looking at that photo in loop view, you can click anywhere in the image to zoom into 100%, and then you click again to come back out. Now to get back to the grid view, the best way to do it is to press the G key. You can double click on the picture again, but if you don't click fast enough, it just zooms in and out. So I usually recommend just press G. It's a lot quicker, and if you get used to that, it makes it quicker to flip back and forth. And then you can always use the buttons down here at the lower left. You've got your grid and your loop view right here. So you can always click between those two. Okay? So let's talk about the toolbar a little bit. This is the main area where we are going to set up some of our organization. So our color coding, our flagging, our star ratings, and things like that. Now it might not show everything at first on your screen, and I'm going to bring up mine and show you how we're going to change this. You can actually customize what this toolbar shows. You could actually take everything on that's shown on here off of the toolbar and make it completely blank, and then just show exactly what you want to. So the main way we do that is this little arrow to the right. So this little arrow on the right hand side right here, if we click on that, we're going to get this menu right here. And everything that's checked is going to show up on that menu bar, on that toolbar. So depending on your screen, some screens are really high resolution and they can show a bunch of these, but some screens won't be able to show everything. So I recommend just turn anything off you're not using and just bring up only the things that you need. Okay, so this is what we want it to kind of look like. It doesn't matter if you have everything on here, but these are the three key things. And if I go back, this is the flagging, the rating, and the color label. You even have some navigation in here though too, and rotation. So I will usually leave the rotation. So if you want to rotate a picture from vertical to horizontal, or if you can actually put arrows on here if you want to go left and right through your pictures, but you can also use the left and right on your keyboard. But these are the primary things we want to do. So I'm going to go back to Lightroom just to show you this. So this is the toolbar at the very bottom. And you can click this arrow right here and change any of that. You can even turn off the view mode. So if I uncheck everything, I can basically get rid of everything on here. So I can completely blank it out. So I'm going to go to a set that has some pictures in it. And I usually recommend leaving those view modes turned on because you've got your grid and your loop view. I will usually turn on sorting. So sorting will let you determine the order that everything shows up. By default, it's capture time, but you can see there's a lot of other options. So you can have it sorted by color or text or rating. So if you label everything 1 through 5 stars, you could have it sorted by whether they're 1 to 5 stars in that order. Added order, all kinds of options there. And then the other main ones I turn on are then the flagging, the rating, and the color label. And then I will usually turn on the thumbnail size, and I'll usually leave it something like that. I might turn on rotate sometimes too. So, but these are the main three here. Now thumbnails too, you can change the thumbnail size. It's just basically like a zoom for your thumbnails, depending on how many pictures you have in there or the size of your screen. So that's key to have. I like having that on there. Okay, so any questions on that? Everybody can see that if you're following along?
Yep.
Okay. So let's talk about some of these items. So flags, ratings, and color labels. And we'll get into these in a little bit more detail, but real simply, flags let you choose 2 options, although when we're filtering, there's going to be 3. I'll explain that in a little bit, but there's 2 main flags. There's a pick, which is your regular flag, and a reject, which is your little flag with a little X in it. And the idea is you can think about it 2 different ways. And again, Lightroom lets you organize however you want. There's a million different ways you can have your workflow set up. I'll tell you how I kind of do mine, but you can use these however you want. The main idea with the flags though is you can use the picks to choose all the pictures that you like and want, and you could mark anything that you kind of want to get rid of or you're not going to use as a reject. And then you can actually filter it to only show you the reject and delete all those, or only show you the picks so you can work on them. Ratings are another way you can do this. It lets you rate from 1 to 5 stars or no rating. So I don't typically use the ratings myself because I have a hard time deciding whether something's a 3 or a 4 star. But if you have something where you want to rate all your favorite ones as 5 stars, maybe all the ones you're thinking about editing that are okay is like 3 stars, and then everything you want to get rid of is 1 star. You can kind of come up with your own scheme there and then use those that way too, and then filter by the certain types. And then there's color labels. Now this is the main thing that I use, but it's just kind of my own system I've come up with in my head. You can assign a color to a photo. You can only assign one color at a time, but you can assign colors like red, green, yellow, blue, things like that. And so what I do in my system is I assign red to everything that I want to work on. And then when it's edited and done and ready, and I assign it green. And if it's kind of in between or a file that I'm probably done with, but I'm thinking about it, I might mark it yellow. So, but primarily I use red and green, because if I have 600 photos that I'm going through, and you can kind of do this with the flags too, but if I have 600 photos I'm going through and I want to pick the 20 that I'm going to edit, I'll just quickly arrow through, use my right arrow, left arrow, go through all my pictures, and every time I see one that I like, my favorites, I mark it red. And then later in the day I can go through and tell it to only show me the ones I marked red, and now instead of 600 pictures I only see 20. And then I can go through and work on those 20, and then as I finish I mark them green, and then I can tell which ones I finished or not. I can always say just show me the red ones and it will only show me the 15 that's left, or I can say show me the green ones and it will show me the 5 that I've worked on and are done. So that it makes it really easy to find everything. But you can do that with just about any of these 3 methods, with thinking about it in different ways. So okay, so before I go on to keywords, I just want to show you that a little bit. So let's just mark a few here. So let's say I wanted to work on this one. You just simply click on the picture, and then you click on the color label or the rating or the flag down here. So let's just mark a few so that when we go to work on these later, I can show you. So we'll mark one green. I'm not really going by any system here. I'm just marking a few different colors and different flags. So let's mark, like, flag that one. We'll flag that one. Let's say we wanted to get rid of this one. We'll reject that one. We'll rate this one 4 stars. We'll rate this one 5. We'll rate this one 3 or 2 just for the heck of it. And we'll call this one blue. Okay, and then we'll flag. Let's just flag another one. And then we'll reject one more. Okay. So it's simply by clicking, or you could do a bunch at once too. So, you know, I could select all 4 of these, and I could say 3 stars. And you'll see the stars right below here. You'll see the flags in the top left, and the color coding will just show up all around it in the frame. Okay? Everybody can see that? So real simple though. Now you can do that from the menu too. So, and there are shortcuts, but if you click on a picture and go up to photo here, you can also do flag, rating, and color label right here. So you have all these options here. So here you can see some of the shortcuts. So you can flag something by pressing P, or reject it by pressing X. Or you can just take the flag off entirely by pressing U. Ratings are 0 through 5, so they match the number of stars, or 0 to take it off. So that's pretty easy. And then color labels take off where the ratings end off. So they end at 5, and then the color labels go 6, 7, 8, 9. Purple's not really assigned, neither's none. So I usually use red and green. So I usually go through my pictures and have one hand hovering over the 6 key. And as I'm looking at my pictures, because then you can have a picture like this, and I can just press 6, and it will set it to red. Now if you press it again, it just takes it off, as long as it's the same color you already had on it. Okay, so let me go back here. Okay, so the next thing, so that's one way I organize my photos. But the other thing, before we talk about how we filter down to these, is keywording, because this is a major filter that you can use as well. Keywords we're probably somewhat familiar with. It's just the same type of thing. You can think of it just like a Google search. It's the different words we want to search for something by. So you want to assign keywords that describe your picture, especially how it works for you, but keywords tend to stay with a picture when you export them out of Lightroom too. So if you're putting a picture up on Facebook or somewhere online and you want people to be able to search and find that picture, you want to make sure it's got the right keywords that describe it. You know, you don't have to have a ton of keywords, but some good ones that really describe what's in the photo. Maybe if it's a person, their name, you know, the location. You could even put whether it's a color or a black and white image, things like that. There's lots of things you can throw in there. So I'll show you some of those options. But you're going to find these on the right-hand side, right over here. So this is on the right-hand side, on the right panel, and there's a keywording section. And you basically just add them into this list right here. So the list is always separated by commas. And this is the primary area. So this top box is where it shows you all of the keywords that are assigned to a photo. And this box right below it that I have highlighted with this orange is where you actually type in a keyword. So you type in a keyword and press enter and it will add it to this list up here. You can also just add to this list directly, but you need to make sure and put those commas in there. So then below it, it has keyword suggestions, and these are just going to be keywords that maybe you've used before that it thinks you might be using again. It's not always right. It doesn't always come up with things that are relevant to the picture because Lightroom doesn't know what's in your picture. But sometimes it will come up with a few that might remind you of something you forgot to put in there, and then you can just click on it and it will add it to this list up here. And then keyword sets can be kind of useful, but they only let you do up to 9 keywords in a set. But it's basically, it has some defaults built into there, like for portrait or landscape, but you can create your own set of keywords that you can simply click on and bring up here so that you can add them quickly to a photo. The main limitation with this is that it only allows 9. I wish I could create a keyword set that had all of my portrait keywords in it or all of my landscape keywords, and if it was 20 keywords, I could just add them all automatically. But this still gives you a good reminder for like the top 9 you might want to use. Again, you don't necessarily have to go crazy and have a huge list up here. If you do too much, then places like Google will kind of not like it. So right below it, before I show you live, right below that keywording section is the keyword list. Now the keyword list shows every keyword that you've ever assigned to any picture in your entire catalog. So this will build up over time. And the nice thing about this is if you're just trying to think of keywords and you want a reminder, you can go through this whole list and see any keyword you've ever used. And if you've got a picture selected, all you have to do is add a little checkbox next to the keyword and it will add it to that picture. So these checkboxes on the left mean that whatever picture I had selected when I took this screenshot had all these keywords assigned to it. So any checked keywords are assigned to the picture or set of pictures you're on. To the right, it actually shows the number of pictures in your entire catalog that have that keyword assigned to it. So if you had 50 pictures that were assigned to river, it would show 50 over here. Now it doesn't show it in the screenshot. I'll show it to you live, but there's actually a little arrow that will show up to the right here. And if you click on that, it will automatically take you and just show you all the pictures that have that keyword. It'll filter out all the pictures for you. So it's a quick way to see all the ocean pictures, for example. There'd be a little arrow that would show up here. Okay. So let's, yeah.
Ms. Linda again.
Yeah.
Can you select like 4 or 5 pictures and then do the clicks on the keyword list and have it applicable to all pictures you chose?
Yep, exactly. Perfect. Yep, good question. Yep, you can do a lot at once. That's the nice thing about Lightroom. Now, there's one caveat to that. So here's the keyword section on the right. Now, if I select, so neither one of these photos has keywords. If I click on each one, there's no keywords in there. So if I select 2 pictures and I start typing in a keyword like landscape, press enter. Let's say they're both at a lake, so we'll do lake. Let's call it travel, hike, outdoors. Okay. So because I had multiple photos selected, it assigned it to all of those photos. Now, what if I went to this just one photo, and I happen to know this is Bear Lake, so I'm going to call this Bear Lake, and I'm going to add that keyword to just that one photo. Now, if I select multiple photos again, see how that Bear Lake has a little asterisk?
Yeah.
It means that even though I've selected multiple photos, that keyword is only assigned to certain one. It's not on all of them. So you have to be careful when you're working with a lot at once, because if I selected, let's say this one down here, Let's call this portrait. This is my wife Blair, and this was actually at the airport. So now if I select 3, now I'm going to get asterisks on a bunch of them because they're on different photos. Now if I add a new keyword here, it will assign it to all 3 of those, but it's not going to synchronize those different keywords from different photos. So it's something to keep an eye on. You can synchronize keywords. We can talk about that in a second. But just know that if that shows that asterisk, it's on one or the other, but not on all the ones you've selected. So sometimes you might need to go back and just select the couple that you're working on. Okay, now if you did want to synchronize keywords, there's a real simple way to do that. If we click on, so let's say these were both Bear Lake. If I have Bear Lake on this one and not on the other one, I can select, you want to select the main one that has the new keywords on it, and then select your other photos, and then go down to the bottom right where it says Sync Metadata. And this will synchronize all kinds of information, but what I usually recommend is go to the bottom, hit check none, and then just check your keywords. And then hit synchronize, and it will copy all the keywords from the main first photo you selected to any of the other ones you selected. So now that asterisk went away because now it's on each individual photo. They both have the same keywords now. So I use that all the time. If I have a set of photos sometimes that all are going to have the same set of keywords, I'll set them all on one photo, and then I'll select the rest and synchronize those keywords across all of them, and then I might go back and individually add some keywords that are specific to each photo. Okay, that makes sense? Okay, so then there are some different suggestions. So, you know, maybe if I was on these and I forgot to put that, oh, they're in California. So now I can just click down here, and I can click California and things like that. Now you do have keyword sets. I created the used gear set, but there's also some, or Nikon set, but there's some default ones. You'll see like outdoor, portrait, wedding photography. So if I go to outdoor, these are some ones that Adobe put in there automatically to suggest it. Or under portrait, it might have some suggestions for portraits. You only get 9 though. And you can easily edit a set and save it as a new set. So if I wanted to create a new set, I could just click on any one of these and hit edit. And I can go and I can change everything I want. And then I can just do save as a new preset and name it whatever I want. And then that would show up in this list. That's how I created like this used gear one. So then I can always add more if I had more I wanted to put in there. I don't use that a lot, but I use it once in a while because it only does 9. So then the next one is keyword list. And this will have everything in here I've ever assigned to any photo in this entire catalog. Now I can click, so I've got these 2 selected, right? Let's just go to one photo. So this photo has anything that's checked will have that keyword on it. So if I uncheck that, it just took that keyword off of it. If I go and check that again, it put it back in. So you can simply add and remove keywords if you've used them before by checking them onto a photo. Now I can also click this little arrow because it says there's 3 photos that have that keyword on it. So if I click this little arrow, it'll automatically show me a view of just all the photos that had that keyword. So and I can go and I can click a different arrow and switch that up. Okay, now that's using filters we're going to talk about next. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. So, but the main thing I get familiar with is using the keywords right here, especially this custom list, and get used to keywording. You know, I won't keyword all my photos, but I'll keyword all the ones that I've marked that I'm going to edit for sure. Anything I'm going to work on, I'm going to export and put online, or that I want to be able to have searchable later. So, okay. Any questions on that? That makes sense? Those are very, very useful. Okay, so let's talk about filters a little bit. So once we've color-coded things, star-rated things, flagged or picked or unpicked or rejected, or we've added keywords, we want to filter them. So we need to be able to search for and narrow down to just those set of pictures that are all color-coded red, let's say. or star rated 5 stars. And that is the filters toolbar at the very top here. Does everybody see that that's following along? Because that gets turned off a lot. So if you don't see that, let me know and we can turn it on in Lightroom. So this is the filters bar right here, library filter. It's at the very top of your grid view. So we're going to talk about this in depth here real quick. So the main thing, so the text part is pretty simple. I'm going to go over that real quick because I want to get to the attributes and everything else. But the text filter lets you search, just like a Google search, and it will pull up any keywords and things like that. So this is how you would find all the keyworded photos that are labeled, let's say, landscape. You can just search for landscape here. It will also let you switch it to search by file name too, because it has some other ways you can search. By default, it searches anything. But you could tell it to only search for keywords or only search for file name if you had a certain file type you were looking for, things like that. And it'll narrow it down that way. The main part that I use though, which I think is really handy, is the attribute section on the toolbar though. This is where you can actually filter down to those flags and color codings and star ratings we talked about. So if it's separate from assigning them, it will look kind of similar, except for it's at the top of your screen now. But if I had set a bunch of those things like we did here, and I'll show you in a second, if we color coded a bunch of stuff red and green and blue and rated 3 stars, then if I go up to attributes and I just click on red here, it'll only show me all the photos that were marked red and nothing else. If I click on green, it will only show me all the green photos. Now if I click on green and red, because you can do that here, it will show me all the green and the red photos. If I click on 3 stars, it will show me all the 3 stars and above. So there's a little icon here. So anything equal to or above. So 3 stars and greater. I can switch that to 3 stars and less. Or I can switch this to equals to only be 3 stars only and not show anything else. And then same with the flags. Now there's only 2 flags, but there's 3 for the filters because we can tell it to show us all the flagged photos or only the rejected photos. Or we can say, show us all the photos that weren't flagged at all. And that's actually the same with the color coding. I can say, I want it to show me all these different colors, or I can say, show me all the photos that don't have any color coding on them. So if I want to find all the photos that I didn't flag or color code, you can think about it that way too. So it's just real simple, clicking on or off. Just make sure that once you click on one, if you want to turn it off, click on it again. Because if you click on red and 3 star and flag, it will filter for all of those. And if you don't have something that has all 3 of those on there, it'll just show you no photos. And you're kind of going, where'd all my photos go? So you make sure and click on one of these to turn it off again. So you're only filtering for one or the other, or maybe a couple. So the colors here are my most used though. So the next section over, and then I'm going to show you this live, is metadata. This is actually kind of fun to go through sometimes. I don't use it as much. But metadata will actually let you filter down to specific criteria that's built into your photos, like which camera was it taken on, which lens was it taken on, what dates was it taken on. And it has some labels here, kind of like the color labels as well. It will actually let you change to different criteria, like you can actually get down to like which aperture and shutter speed something was taken at, or which ISO it was taken at. So if you want to see all the photos that were taken at ISO 800, you could do that. Or all the photos that were taken at 50 with your 50mm lens. So let's show you this. Let's go through this real quick. So earlier, remember I kind of color coded and I flagged and picked some of these photos. So if we go to the very top here, and let's just go straight to attribute here. If I click on red, it will now show me only the photos that were marked red. Now if I click on green, it will add to that and show me the photos that were also green. So I got to remember to turn off red if I only want to see the green photos. Now if I turn off green, it'll go back to everything because I didn't click on anything else. And if I click on this one, it'll show me none. So everything that was not color coded at all. So maybe I wanted to go through those again and mark some other ones red that I want to work on. And then I can turn that off to show me everything. And same with everything else. I can click on a flag and it shows me all the flagged ones. I can show all the rejected ones. Or I can show all the ones that were not flagged, which will include the color-coded ones because now we're just doing flags. Now, one thing that newer versions of Lightroom have is also an edit or non-edit. So you can't really customize this, but this will basically show you any photo that had any kind of editing done to it, or show you all the photos that have not been edited. So another way, that's another kind of fun way without having to do anything. If you had worked on a bunch of photos and you just wanted it to show you just the photos you had not worked on yet, you could just simply click this one with a slash through it and it would show you all the photos you haven't done anything to. And then there's rating. So of course I could say show me 3 stars and up, or 2 stars and up, or 4, or 5. And you just click on the star again to get rid of it. Now I can change it, so I could say equal to, so now I only want 3 stars. It won't show me anything above or below it. Or I could say 3 stars or less. So anything less, which includes ones that don't have any kind of star on there. And then I can change it back and click that off if I want to. Okay? That makes sense? So that's kind of the main section there. And then, so that's the main thing I use, is I'll go down and I'll filter all my red ones. Let's say I go and work on this photo. I'm done editing it. Then I'll go to the bottom and I'll change it green and watch what happens. Because I'm filtering to only show red. So when I switch this green, it goes away. And now if I go back to my grid, it's gone. Because now it's marked as green. So I can always then go and see it again later under my green, but I know that I don't have to work on it anymore and it doesn't show up in my view. So that's kind of the way that I do that typically. Okay, so use those however you want, but I would definitely play with them. The next section is metadata. So one thing I did with this class under this Lightroom Basics folder is I threw all kinds of photos in here from all over the place just to show you that it can show the different cameras. So if I wanted to see just ones taken with certain cameras like Nikon D810 or 7D Mark II, it will show me just the ones that I took with a specific camera. You can always go back, or a specific lens, or a specific date, but you can change this. So there's this little filters thing up here. It probably says no filter. And if I change it to camera info, it will show me some of the same stuff, but now it also shows me focal length and whether or not my flash fired. Or I can change it to exposure info, and now it'll actually show me not only focal length, but ISO and aperture and shutter speed. So if I wanted to find everything that was taken at f8, I can do that. Or maybe I don't want anything that's too noisy that was taken way up at a high ISO, so I want to find all the ones that were ISO 400 or 250 or 200 or whatever you want there. Or I can select all of those, so I just hold down Shift and I can select a set of them and do everything that's lower ISO numbers, or go back to all. So that's another really handy way. And then I can click None to kind of turn everything off. If you do have a bunch of stuff open and filtered and things like that, you can always go to None here, or you can also go to Custom, to this filter bar here, and just say Filters Off. And that will turn everything off too. And go back. So be careful with that, because if you're under attribute and you had clicked like this one and this one and this one, oh, let's see, I don't think I have anything that's color coded plus that. This will typically stay on unless you click it again or hit none. So if you're ever open Lightroom and it's not showing you all your pictures, double check that there aren't any filters set. Or you can always go filters off and go back there. Okay, any questions on that? That makes sense? Okay, so that, I mean, that is the primary organization in Lightroom. So that's all of that part there. The biggest thing is, yeah.
Metadata on the right column under the keyword list.
Yeah.
Is that something that you go in and address when you're working on your photos, or is it? I'm not sure why it's there and at the top.
So the metadata at the top is for filtering down to certain metadata. This is where it actually shows you what's actually in your file. And there's two parts to metadata. The first part is the EXIF, which is exposure information. And this is usually built in from your camera. So this comes from your camera. It's going to have the date it was taken, and it's all the information that you can use up in the metadata filter, like which camera it was taken with, whether the flash fired or not, what ISO, shutter, aperture, things like that. So that's all built in from your camera. And then there's also the IPTC, which just stands for, it's part of the international, what is it? It's the press, I forget the exact acronym, but it's a press association that creates some of these standards. But these ones are ones that you fill out yourself, except for you don't want to change the date created, because that would kind of mess with the photo. So, but all of this you can set yourself. So you can mark it whether it's copyrighted or not. You can put in any of your copyright information. If you want to have a title or genre for your picture, or if you want to put in your contact information or your email or your website, you would have to put all this in here. Now, this metadata filter doesn't filter for all of this data. It filters more for your exposure information. But if you fill some of this information out, you can usually search that under the text search. So if you had added a title and you searched for that title, you can find it that way. So
this is where you put your copyright information.
Yep, exactly. And this information will usually go with your file too. So if you're uploading your stuff online and you want to make sure that if somebody downloads that photo or is looking at the information on that photo, that they see your copyright information, or maybe you want them to see your name and some basic contact information. And so if somebody finds your photo and wants to contact you, they know who made the photo and they can get in touch. You know, it might get you some work or something like that. Or if you just want to throw your website in there, things like that. So this is something I usually do recommend filling out, and that will help along the way too. Especially the copyright. Even if you don't have it officially copyrighted, they'll usually default to unknown. I usually will just go and mark all my stuff copyrighted, and then I might just put my name and a website, my website in here under copyright URL. So just so it's got something in there. So cool. All right. Well, that's the main thing. What I recommend doing is playing with all of this, and let me know if you have any questions. Try and go through. A big part is make sure you understand folders, organize your folders. All my folders are organized under empty folders. Let me show you my folder structure on my computer real quick. Although, here, I know we're at noon. Does everybody have another minute?
Sure.
Okay. I'll kind of show you how I organize my folders too, because that's kind of where I start my organization. And then you don't have to do it the exact same way. I'm just connecting my external hard drive. I don't have many of my photos on my computer anymore. They're all on an external hard drive. So I'll drag this up there in a second. So let's see. So under my external hard drive, I have a photography archive. Even though I work off of it a lot, it's not really an archive. And under that, I've got all these folders which are just used for categories. So if I click on like travel, so there's no actual photos in that travel folder. I organize then folders underneath that have all the pictures from that trip. And I do it European style with the date first so that it organizes them in the correct order by date. So that's how I start my organization. And then from there, I do all the stuff inside of Lightroom, like keywording and color labeling and things like that. But when I'm adding my photos from my camera to the computer through Lightroom, this is kind of how I'll do it. So I went and created all these different folders, either ahead of time or as they came up. And then I just throw everything underneath that. So here's my events thing. I used to shoot events for different magazines and things like that back in the day. So, or if I've just gone out and, and sometimes I might have other folders underneath that. So Zoom Magazine, I did several events for. So I've got a Zoom Magazine folder that has no pictures in it, but then I've got the individual pictures underneath each one of their events. So that's kind of where I start, because then it's really easy to browse through the folder section. And then I will use collections to pull out, like for example, on travel, I might pull out individual pictures throughout here that I've worked on into kind of a travel collection of all the best or my favorite pictures that I might want to print. So I can quickly go back and find those and export them at different sizes if I want to upload them to a new gallery or print them somewhere and things like that. So I really recommend, that's one thing that can help a lot. I know, Linda, we were talking about you wanted some help with organization and stuff like that too. And that's one of the first things I'll kind of look at with people is kind of the folder structure and where you have things. So a lot of people, it defaults to your pictures folder, and then I have a photography folder And then here's my live raw with my different categories, kind of like I have it on the external. And then I do have some like finished JPG and classes and things like that too. So there's lots of different ways you can kind of do that. So, but that's one of the biggest things too. If you get your folder structure kind of down, that'll help a lot in the future. So, all right, so play with that. I will get you